Peace. What's happening, good people? This gift here for Payusnomind, and let's talk about why all of a sudden there is such an increase in accusations of streaming fraud. Now, if you are in the artist community, you've probably heard a lot of artists saying, hey, they got unjustly accused of streaming fraud. Their music got removed by their digital distributor. Their revenue got repossessed in a sense, right? They didn't get paid, all of this stuff. And you're like, why is this happening? And how can I prevent this from happening to me? So we're going to talk about that here today. We're going to break down why these accusations are increasing in occurrence and what artists can do to avoid it. First, let's talk about the players. You got Universal Music Group, you got Spotify, and you got another one that's rarely mentioned but plays a major role in this ecosystem, and that is the Chinese music enterprise Tencent. So Tencent owns shares of Universal Music Group, and Universal Music Group owns shares of Tencent, and both Tencent and Universal Music Group own shares of Spotify, and Spotify owns shares of Tencent. So it's like one big corporate orgy where they all are invested in each other's interests. And with the value of these stocks, it is related to the health of these companies. So when Universal Music Group does an earnings call, if they report that revenues are down, guess what? The value of those shares decline. And that is bad news for not just Universal, but also Tencent and also Spotify, which is invested in Tencent. So that is one thing to understand. The players and how all of these parts fit together, because what it impacts is the money. Now, when it comes to the money, it's about market share. So streaming platforms like Spotify pay based on market share, pay based on a company's percentage of the market. So if a company is responsible for 10% of the amount of streams in total, that company gets 10% of Spotify's revenue. So when a company like Universal Music Group looks around and they see digital distributors and music coming from that sector every year increasing in market share and gobbling up 50% of market share to where it's on par with them, they see a major threat to not only their control, because market share gives you a ton of leverage in negotiations, but also their revenue. We are going to be responsible for a smaller percentage of the total market. That means we're going to make less money. That means our shares are going to be worth less. And that means bad news for us, Spotify, and Tencent, and whoever else is invested in us. So something has to be done about this. So they look and they say, okay, well, where's the problem coming from? It's coming from this sector, these indie artists, because there's too many of them, right? On a one-to-one basis, there's no independent artist releasing music through TuneCore or DistroKid or any digital distributor that can stack up with a Taylor Swift or a Beyonce or anybody to that effect. But when you have millions of artists releasing millions of releases, yeah, they can compare by sheer quantity. And that was the problem. There's too many releases, too many artists eating up too much market share, resulting in less revenue for Universal Music Group. So they decide to take action to address the independent sector. And that's when they came up with artist-centric payments, this artist-centric payment model. This was all a part of Universal Music Group's negotiations with Spotify that took place somewhat late last year. Now, that artist-centric model was the model that resulted in, Spotify saying you don't get paid for your first 1,000 streams every year of each song, right? Basically charging artists $3 every year for every song that they distribute to their platform, creating more money for the revenue pool for Universal Music Group to get a bigger percentage of. That was the goal, to prevent the indie artists from eating into market share, which also created a new revenue stream. Now, this is something they weren't so shy about, with the head of Universal Music Group referring to digital distributors as merchants of garbage. Now, along with that artist-centric payment model came a real strong crackdown on streaming fraud, where they started imposing fees for every instance of streaming fraud. Digital distributors. Now, digital distributors like TuneCore and CD Baby and DistroKid, these companies make their money by distributing music to Spotify and Apple Music and other streaming platforms and music stores. That is their business. They are not like a record company that has an ownership stake in catalogs and makes money from the exploitation of catalogs. They make their money by artists paying a fee to get their music into Spotify, Apple Music, etc. Some of them might take a percentage of revenue where they get a percentage of what's earned by the music when it gets streamed in Spotify or sold in iTunes, but they are not invested in the catalog, meaning that if you take that music and put it up on Bandcamp, they don't make money from it. If you take that music and put it up on YouTube, like upload it to your YouTube channel, they don't make money from it. So their money comes from that relationship with Spotify. Now, when you have this major crackdown on streaming fraud, their license to distribute to Spotify is at risk. So if there are too many accusations of streaming fraud, they lose their license. And that is a death knell to their service. They effectively have no service because everybody wants their music in Spotify. So if they can't distribute to it, then they're dead. That's it. It's over. Now, in addition to losing their license, they are also faced with fines. So if they have to pay for each accusation of streaming fraud. And that, when you have this vast library of artists and releases, can effectively bankrupt the distributor. So a lot of them have taken a zero tolerance policy where you get accused, you get removed. Did you know that they don't have to remove your music? It's not like Spotify demands that the music comes down. Spotify just informs them that a song is accused of streaming fraud. And it's up to them to take action, so they don't have to remove the music. They could eat that. They could say, hey, the song's not guilty, right? And eat the fine and keep the music there. They choose to take it down. And even before the fines and all of this stuff, they were choosing to remove the music. And like I said again, that is a result of scale issues. It's just the easier and most cost-effective option. Scale. Now, this is the other factor here. Digital distributors take on too many artists. You got that model, $20 a year, unlimited distribution, unlimited releases. It attracts a whole bunch of artists, a lot of them that are just tire kickers, right? Because it's like, well, $20 a year, unlimited distribution. I don't really have a plan or anything, but who knows what might happen? I put my music up, submit it for Spotify editorial, maybe I get playlisted. So you got a whole bunch of music coming from artists in that sector. And then you got other artists who are like, they're looking around, they see, okay, you could pay $20 and get a whole bunch of fake streams for $20. Okay, maybe I could have a few cousins or somebody, put my songs on the playlist and stream it and repeat and make $20, $50 a month. And then you got high level streaming fraud people, all of these, but a lot of those people are attracted to $20 a year for unlimited distribution with unlimited releases and things of that nature because it's low risk, high reward. All it costs you is $20. If you got caught, all right, I'm out $20. So what? So it attracts a lot of bad actors. And in addition to that, scale is about whether you can provide your service and still stay in profit. And for a lot of these digital distributors, there are too many artists for them to provide a quality experience for each artist and stay in profit. They can't do it. There's too many artists. And that impacts accusations of streaming fraud because they cannot address each instance to investigate to find out whether this song is legitimately guilty of streaming fraud. So they just take that zero tolerance policy where if you get accused, you get removed and they take your music down so they don't have to worry about it, right? They don't have to worry about the fine. They don't have to worry about the potential of getting their license revoked. And they don't have to address you individually. Fairness. Streaming fraud accusations and whose music gets removed is without a doubt unfair. It's unfair. Spotify, when they accuse a song of streaming fraud, most times it's coming from a playlist that is engaging and just driving a ton of traffic to his playlist to increase the stream counts of songs so people keep paying them to be on the playlist. Now, on those playlists aren't just the music of indie artists. There are songs from established artists. There are songs from Justin Bieber on those playlists. There are songs from all sorts of major artists on those playlists. But the only artists that get removed are the artists from DistroKid or TuneCore or something to that effect. And to prevent people from making the argument of, hey, why are you taking my music down and not this guy's music down when we're both being accused or when I'm being accused of streaming fraud coming from a playlist that his music is on, they don't provide that information to most of the digital distributors. Most of the digital distributors aren't being informed of the playlist that your music is guilty or being accused of streaming fraud coming from. Like, rarely have I seen an artist come and say, hey, well, here's the playlist that these guys are saying that my music was on that drove the streaming fraud, where they could kind of investigate and say, all right, well, one, let me stay away from this playlist, and two, look at all the other songs and make an argument about why these guys haven't been removed. They're not given that kind of information. And that is unfair. But the reality of the situation is it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? You know, it's not something that we have the power or ability to change. Value. Now, when it comes to Spotify's application of its streaming fraud policy and who gets removed and who doesn't get removed, it comes down to value to the platform. Now, when you look at a lot of the commentary that came out of Universal Music Group's head, he was talking a lot about the value that music record companies bring to Spotify. Not in the sense of how much streams they generate, but basically the users that they bring to Spotify. So it's like, who cares how much somebody's song gets streamed? What it comes down to is who brought the listener to the platform. Why is the listener there? Are they there because your music is there, or are they there because my music is there? And if I took my music off of Spotify, how would that impact Spotify? And that's what it comes down to with who gets accused and removed of streaming fraud. Spotify has a very advanced system where they can identify who is, like, they got it in the Spotify for Artists dashboard now. Active listeners, casual listeners, they know who these people are. So they know the music that their users value and the music that they don't value. So when it comes to deciding who to kick out as far as consolidating the revenue and making sure the people who are bringing the most value make the most money, yeah, they're gonna look at, okay, well, who gets a whole bunch of streams from playlists, algorithmic playlists, things of that nature, and not necessarily from people streaming from their user library or something like that, where we could say this person or these people who listen to this music would miss it if it was gone. Because ultimately, there really shouldn't be as much of an issue for the artists having their music removed from Spotify or streaming platforms in general as the streaming platforms, because an artist can go and upload their music elsewhere. They could go and put their music on YouTube. They could go and put their music on SoundCloud, Bandcamp, and what would happen if that music had demand was users would be like, damn, I can't find this song on Spotify. I can't find it on Apple Music. Where can I find it? And they would go to the places where they could find their music, and ultimately those platforms would end up losing users. So they do not want to remove the music that carries value where they know people would be looking for those songs. So to a great effect, an artist that has their music removed from streaming fraud is far more likely to just be generating streams from the ecosystem and not necessarily from people who are like demand their music. And you see that a lot of times when an artist is accused of streaming fraud. Like, you rarely hear an artist say, hey, my fans reached out to me and were like, hey, what's happening? We can't find your release. Your music got removed from my playlist. Like, that is something that you rarely hear. Somebody saying, hey, I got DMs where people was like, yo, your music ain't on Spotify no more. I can't find it. Like, if an artist gets that, then that artist is less likely to encounter accusations of streaming fraud and have their music removed. So it's like, to a great effect, having a fan base is one deterrent to accusations and having your music removed from streaming fraud. Because again, it is about value. It's about who is bringing people to the platform and who is keeping people on the platform from the standpoint that these people value the music that's there and is there because that music is there. And if that music got removed, they might possibly find themselves on another platform because that music is available there. That's what it comes down to. Protection. What can you do to avoid accusations of streaming fraud? Well, understand that you're vulnerable if you don't have fans. So that's one of the core things that you could do. Develop an actual fan base and not focus on the acquisition of streams and just try to get more and more streams without having individual users and people that care about your music. Because if Spotify and all of these streaming platforms can look at their metrics and understand, hey, there are people that care about this music because they stream it on demand and they're running searches for it and things of that nature, you being accused of streaming fraud and having your music removed from the platforms is way less likely to happen. So focus less on getting streams, focus more on getting fans, and that is a means of protecting yourself against accusations of streaming fraud. 2, use a digital distributor that has a better reputation and also has a level of status. So you have digital distributors that have these offers, right? $20 a year, unlimited distribution, unlimited releases. That attracts a lot of rubbish. It attracts a lot of artists that are just kicking the tires. It attracts a lot of artists that are trying to do suspect things because it's like, well, at the end of the day, I'm only going to pay $20 and then I'm going to test and see if this streaming fraud thing that I see where they like pay $20 and get on all of these playlists and get these streams, if that'll work, right? $20, did it, didn't work, okay, cool, I'm only out $20, right? But if you look at a distributor like a Venice, let's say, $500 a year, are they gonna pay that to test that theory? Probably not, you know? So by nature of the price, it attracts different clientele. So you got the price, the more expensive distributors like a Venice, and then you got the more elite distributors like AWOL, you know, that go by application, where you gotta have demand already and then apply and get accepted. And when you are dealing with distributors in that regard, where you got more like a distribution deal, where you have contacts there that you communicate with and run strategies by and stuff like that, it's far less likely that you are going to be removed due to streaming fraud. So AWOL and those types of distributors, it is by application, or, they have to reach out to you. Venice just charges a price that discourages a lot of artists that would be down for shenanigans. And additionally, they have a community. So Venice has their community platform where artists can come in and ask questions and do workshops and stuff like that. And they have support staff available within those communities where they can learn people's names. They know who the artists are. They know their growth and development to a great extent, because people have been posting in the community, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm working on. So it's less likely to happen in ecosystems like that. So where there's community, where there's engagement with the staff, and people know your name and understand you and your music and how you're promoting your music, that's less likely to happen. If you use a digital distributor where you just pay $20 and you're just like another face in the mob, more likely you're going to be flagged for streaming fraud and just have your music removed and be like a little man in a glass jar, right? Pounding on it and nobody can hear you and there's nothing you can do. Now, as always, we have links to products and services we recommend, as well as discounts to services like Venice Music in the description box. So you can check the link there. You can hit me up at Payusnomind on Instagram, at Payusnomind on Twitter, payusnomind@gmail.com. There's links to services that I provide in the description box as well. This is Gift signing off. Pay us no mind. Peace, good people. One.